I certainly feel like the Arizona Cardinals were in a tough and almost unfortunate spot in the 2023 NFL Draft. And the reason I say that is, yes, they started off with the 3rd overall pick. But it wasn't pick 2, certainly wasn't pick 1. So the leverage that they may have had for potential trade back isn't as great as one of those teams in that spot if they were so inclined to trade back like the Bears did, going back from 1 to 9 in that trade with Carolina Panthers. You sprinkle in a new general manager, a new head coach, it screams out, combined with that top 3 pick in round 1, hey, you're in rebuild mode. It's time to tear it down to the studs. There's a reason the last general manager is gone. There's a reason the last head coach got fired. But that's not the case here, because this team is in a spot where effectively, probably from the next couple of seasons, they're bound to Kyler Murray and bound to that contract that looks really, really bad and only looks worse by the day. All the while, Kyler Murray is recovering from a torn ACL, so we don't even know what he's going to look like in 2023. So your draft position indicates you should be tearing it down to the studs, rebuilding, perhaps trying to build around a new young quarterback, but the previous regime committed a whole hell of a lot of money to Kyler Murray, and it looks like a kind of a yikesy so far. So the draft here was about, how do you build around Kyler Murray? How do you reinforce this team a little bit without sacrificing the future, while maybe even perhaps giving yourself some flexibility? And I say, in general, I really liked the Arizona Cardinals' approach to this year's draft. As I personally think, when you look at day 1, GM Monty Ossenfort had a hell of a day. He was able to leverage picks number 3 and 105 into a massive trade down package for a non-QB. Think about that. So another team in the Texans could jump up and take a defensive end in a draft class that was really deep at edge rusher. They got picks 12 and 34 in this year's draft, 1st and 3rd round picks in 2024 from the Texans, who could potentially be a bad team again next year, right? Like, that's crazy. And they turn around and send 12 and 34 plus pick 168 to Detroit for number 6. So effectively, to move down 3 spots, the Cardinals were able to pick up a 1st and 3rd round pick for next year. Let's think about that. That's insane to me. No impact to 2024 actually helped their position in 2024, when it might even matter more. Whenever you could do that and you still get your guy, to me, that's a masterclass in terms of how you should be playing the draft game. Now, personally, I wasn't nearly as high on Paris Johnson Jr. as the Arizona Cardinals, but they liked him. And, sometimes how you think a talent is going to fit, how you think they fit your system, the responsibilities that you're going to be tasking them with can be more important than just like an objective, grading of a player. So they were able to get their guy because, in the days leading up to the draft, there were a lot of reports of, hey, could the Arizona Cardinals be drafting Paris Johnson Jr. at number 3 if they can't find a trade down partner such as like the Tennessee Titans? And they got their guy 3 spots lower to do so, got a 1st and 3rd round pick next year. You goddamn right, I got to give the Cardinals an A on this one. Like, even if Paris Johnson kind of stinks at the NFL level, I still think this is an A in terms of their approach and their draft philosophy. I really, really do. And then as you go to day 2, you can see a clear intent, clear philosophy and strategy to focus on high upside athletes. And, that can be a risky proposition, but it could really pay off in a big way. B.J. Ojulari has similar upside to his brother Aziz, who's an 8 to 10 sack guy in this league. Like, you look at, I think last year he didn't play a full season, but in like 7 games he had 5 sacks. So he was on that pace, right? He had I think 8 sacks as a rookie. I think his brother is similar, and not just because they're brothers, and not just because they play the same position, but I think the upside is similar. So in the 2nd round, if you got a 10 sack guy, that's a pretty good draft pick. Garrett Williams is coming off of a torn ACL and, kind of so-so long speed, but he's got some really good coverage skills. His quickness and instincts, I think, bode well as a starting nickel corner in the league. And if he didn't tear his ACL there at Syracuse, probably would have been a little bit higher in the draft than where he went. And their other 3rd round pick, Michael Wilson, the wide receiver from Stanford, if he can actually ever stay healthy, which is a huge question here, but you also took him late in round 3, so it's not as big of a deal. It's worth the risk. It's worth the gamble. If he can actually ever stay healthy, he will outplay his draft position, be a high-end wide receiver 2 in this league, period. So I gave the Cardinals a B for day 2. When I look at the approach, when I look at how they were able to get some real high upside type of athletes, there's a chance that maybe Ojulari is the only one that pans out and Williams and Wilson can't really stay healthy or they just don't cut the mustard. Maybe. But when you think about guys fitting into new head coach Jonathan Gannon's defense, Ojulari and Williams are certainly going to do that. And you bring in Michael Wilson, another weapon for your quarterback Kyler Murray, following that up with your first-round pick of Paris Johnson, a left tackle to protect his blind side. And frankly, anything the Cardinals did in day 3, to me at least, my opinion, is that it was going to be an added bonus. And I didn't think they did too bad at all, really. At worst, John Gaines II is a kind of long-term, backup interior offensive lineman. He has some starter upside too. Maybe more like average starter, but still, like getting guys that can start in the NFL in the 4th round is pretty good work. Clayton, I think, has quarterback 2 upside. Could be long-term backup to Kyler Murray or some other quarterback that they might draft in 2024. Owen Pappoe, I think, at worst, has the potential to be a special team stud, but with his speed and his coverage ability, I think he can play some passing downs and coverage snaps. Kei'Trel Clark, here from Richmond, he could be another special teams contributor and sub-package guy. You get him mid kind of day 3. And Dante Stills, I thought, had the most upside of any of their day 3 picks. I was frankly surprised that they were able to get him as low in the draft as they did. So I thought it was a solid performance for the Cardinals in day 3. I gave them a C there. Not a lot of maneuvering up and down, not picking up additional draft capital. The picks themselves don't overwhelm me and wow me. Like, that's solid. And I know for some to be like, hey, no. Like, a solid performance deserves a C. A solid performance does not deserve an A or an A+. I see so many of these like draft graders and so forth, and they get ridiculous with the number of A's they give out. When I look at day 1 and being able to only effectively have to trade back 3 spots, and you say, well, you sacrifice something in terms of, round 2 pick, whatever, bullshit. At the end of the day, they moved back 3 spots and picked up a 1st and 3rd round pick in 2024. It really doesn't fucking matter what they get out of Paris Johnson. Anything that is a bonus, that's a goddamn A. They got that type of trade package for a non-quarterback. That's crazy to me. But day 3 was more like a solid performance. That's a C. So you think about next year, like there is a scenario, might feel unlikely and probably is, there is a scenario where you could say the Cardinals could end up with not only 2 top 5 picks, if not at least 1, but potentially the top 2 picks in the draft. And imagine if you're sitting there with picks 1 and 2 in the 2024 NFL draft, you could sit there and you could take Caleb Williams number 1, or maybe you like Drake May better from UNC. You take a quarterback 1, and then you sell off that 2nd pick to the highest bidder, or you sit there and you say, fuck it, we're taking Marvin Harrison Jr., like we're doubling down on big dick energy here in the desert. I think the long-term grade for this draft is going to come down to what the day 2 class did in terms of the talent. What are Williams and Wilson and Ojulari going to do? That's what's going to determine how we look back at Austin Fort's first draft class in Arizona. But I really liked what I saw, the approach, the strategy, the execution of it. So I'm giving the Arizona Cardinals for this year's draft class a B. I thought they were a really, really good performing team in the NFL draft.